So how do I maximize my investment in employee development?
Well, the most important thing is really understanding what development is. So starting from looking at what the job criteria is, looking for what are the qualifications, what are the behaviors that we want on the particular job. Understanding those, so having done our analysis that we did at the point of hiring, we're then able to say, okay, what are the behavioral competencies that the person needs to do in order to be effective in this job? And only by really understanding that are we able to maximize our investment, because our efforts are focused within the job itself.
So once you've understood the behaviors that someone has in a job, is it actually possible for them to change? And if so, how do they go about that?
Well, the most important thing is having the person understand themselves in relationship to the behavioral competencies that are necessary to succeed in the job. If they see their own behaviors in relationship to that, there's a critical point of them making a decision, do I want to change that or not? Because behavioral changes only occurs from the person themselves. It's not from outside. It's not from threats. It's not from coercion. It's from them deciding, okay, I would like to change because I would like to succeed in my job. Okay? Or if not, I'll look for a different job, or I'll look for to adjust my job to fit myself more. So the critical thing is, how do I get that person to want to change? How do I get that person to see that if they adjust their behaviors in this way or that way, that will help them in succeeding in the job? The next thing is, exactly what behaviors do they need to change? What do they need to add? What do they need to adjust in order to make that happen?
There's been a lot of talk about focusing on people's strengths, but how does one actually do that?
Well, the most important thing is to understand what your strengths are. But more importantly, what are your strengths in relationship to the job that you're doing? So it's not just purely your strengths, but what are those key things that you bring to that job that has the potential to help you to succeed the most? So understanding those is critical to then becoming more successful, because you can enhance those behaviors more easily than you can enhance your weaknesses. But we have another way of looking at behavior, which we call the paradox view, where we look at behavior in terms of what you might consider opposite thoughts or opposite behaviors. And when a person has a certain behavior, for example, they may tend to be very frank, and they think that that's the right behavior. But in the paradox view, we look at the balance of frankness and diplomacy, for example. So the frankness without diplomacy is actually bluntness. So it's something that can hinder you in a particular job, even though you may see it as a virtue. Okay. Therefore, when we look at the person's behavior, we acknowledge that, okay, you have this frankness, that's a great strength, but what you need to do is add something to it. Add some diplomacy to it. So we're not trying to stop you from doing that, but what we're trying to do is to create a balance that will make that behavior effective for you and much more productive for you.
What do you offer to make leaders more effective in their roles?
The most important thing in terms of leadership is people understanding themselves. So the first thing they have to understand is, what are their qualities that make them effective or ineffective as a leader? How are they impacting other people? How do they create their vision, their broad view perspective? How do they interact with other people? Getting that self-awareness is the most critical thing in order for them to become better leaders. Understanding theory and leadership principles, that's great, that's nice, but nothing really happens to change, to improve your leadership ability until you actually come to grips with your own behavior and your own interactions with people. And that's again where we look at the paradoxes of leadership, because there's many paradoxes of leadership.
Can you give us an example of a paradox?
For example, to be an effective leader, you have to have connection and warmth and empathy with the people that you're leading. At the same time, you have to enforce the rules. So you have to be strong, you have to hold up what the company needs to do. So that's a paradox in itself. And people often will go to one side or the other, weakening their stance as a leader. Okay? Another example is that the person needs to look at what can possibly go wrong. They need to understand potential problems that can occur. But at the same time, they have to be optimistic and they have to be positive about what's occurring. So we actually have 12 leadership paradoxes that enable a person to come into balance so that they can interact much more effectively as a leader.
Okay, that makes sense. And then how does it look when it comes to teams? What are the ways to make them more effective?
Well, in teams, we do the same thing. So we look at the paradoxes within a team and we analyze where are the team strengths, where are the team weaknesses, and help the team to understand themselves so that they can see, okay, this area relates to our greatest team strengths and where we're strong and versatile. And this is where we actually have conflicts with each other. And by understanding the paradoxical relationships of behaviors, we're able to then see how to bring that team together in a much more effective way.
What tools do you offer to help leaders be more effective?
So they need to have tools to understand the people that they're leading, because it's not enough just to lead. You have to really know who you're leading, and you have to be able to interact with people effectively. You have to know how to manage people. So we give those people tools in which they're much more able to do that. By understanding people, we give them tools that help them to engage the people that they're working with, and we give them tools to help them understand themselves as well.